So we're here to talk about this full day of training on December 18th that's being offered by the National Fire Protection Association around the National Electrical Code. And on that day, the person that's going to be conducting most of this training is subject matter expert Christel Hunter, who joins us now. Christel, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, Butch?
I'm excellent. So Christel, let's start by talking about your role as Director for EPCs for General Cable. Explain what your role is there.
Well, I do a couple of different things. I manage a team of field applications engineers in the Western U.S., and I also serve on multiple codes and standards committees in the U.S. and Canada. So I spend quite a bit of time working with the National Electrical Code, the Canadian Electrical Code, and product standards in North America.
So as far as this full day of training, you've done tons of training in your career, I'm sure, from being on the other side of being trained and also training from the other side. You've got to be excited about this full day of training. Why?
I am. I'm looking forward to it. And the first NEC class I ever took was an NFPA course over 12 years ago. And so to see the evolution of the training that's being offered is really exciting for me. And to be able to reach people who maybe can't travel, but still need the training and want to stay up on the all of the requirements in the NEC, I think it's a great format.
So let's talk more specifically about what's going to go on December 18th and the training that you're going to be conducting. Let's talk about the type of things in the NEC for 2014 that you're going to be focusing on.
Okay, well, because we only have one day, I'm really going to focus in on the basic requirements in the code, primarily in chapters 1, 2, and 3, but we're also going to talk about Article 90 and the structure of the code. So we're going to look at general requirements, wiring methods, grounding and bonding, and a lot of the basic requirements that are applicable to every electrical job.
Christel, I think one of the exciting things about this full day of training is that you're actually going to do hands-on exercises with the audience and the people that sign up for this training. Talk about that.
We are, and I've chosen exercises that will give us a really good variety of activities. The first one we're going to do is actually have the participants find requirements in the code. So, for example, if you are a master electrician and you've got one of your electricians that comes to you and says, where can I put the disconnect switch for a busway? That'll be one of the scenarios, and participants will actually have the opportunity to go through the code, use the table of contents, use the index, use their knowledge of the structure of the code to find answers to different scenarios and different questions. So that really goes to understanding how the code is structured and how to locate requirements in the code. The second activity we're going to do is circuit sizing. And so we're going to look at requirements in Article 310 for allowable ampacity of conductors. We're going to look at requirements in Article 240 for overcurrent protection of conductors. And then we're also going to consider other requirements like termination requirements in Article 110, as well as the basic requirements for branch circuits, feeders, and services in Articles 210, 215, and 230. And so we'll tie all those together in one activity to see how they all work together in the code. And then the third activity will be identification of grounding and bonding conductors in the system. So we have a lot of terms for different parts of the grounding and bonding system. So we're going to spend some time making sure we understand the definitions and identification of each one of those different conductors.
Let's go a little deeper on grounding and bonding, because from what I've learned when it comes to the National Electrical Code and what's going on with electrical safety today, people are experts in this industry. Your people that you're going to be training are, but there still is some confusion or needs some clarity on grounding and bonding. And that's an ongoing thing, isn't it?
It's always ongoing. And Code Making Panel 5 has done an excellent job over the years of clarifying the requirements, making Article 250 easier to use, but it is still a complex subject. And so we'll spend time going through not only the definition and identification, but also sizing of grounding and bonding conductors, and how that relates to different portions of the electrical installation.
Christel, when it comes to the application of the National Electrical Code, what's one of the things that's going to be addressed on December 18th from the perspectives of everybody, from an installer, from an engineer, and from an enforcer? What's one of the difficult things that happens when applying the National Electrical Code?
One of the most difficult things about using the NEC is making sure that you have identified all of the requirements for a particular installation or a part of the installation. So let's take circuit sizing, for example. If you just look at, say, sizing a feeder conductor, you have to consider not only the base requirement in 215.2A1 to have the minimum conductor that's large enough for your load, but you have to also compare that minimum size to the minimum conductor size required for the conditions of use, which might be high ambient temperatures or more than 3 current carrying conductors. Once you've determined what the load is and what your conditions of use are, you also have to understand the requirements in Article 240 for overcurrent protection. If you look at 240.4, it gives us different rules for overcurrent protection based on whether you're 800 amps and below or above 800 amps. And then you also have to think about your terminations. What temperature are you allowed to use for the ampacity tables? Can you use the 75 degree C column in Table 310.15B16? Or are you limited to 60 degrees C? So you have to understand the termination limitations in 110.14C. If you look at all those, you have a lot of requirements just to determine one conductor size. So from an engineer's perspective or an electrician that's trying to size a conductor, or even an inspector who's going on to a job to make sure that all those requirements have been met, you have to understand how all of those requirements in chapters 1 through 3 work together.
Christel, can you go back in your history and talk about why training has been valuable for you over the years?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think I've mentioned before that my very first NEC class was an NFPA on-site training, and that really got me inspired, I think, to look more deeply into the code. Because if you look at the NEC, it can be very intimidating. It's basically just a collection of requirements. But going through the NFPA class really helped me learn how to use the code, how to understand it, and not feel intimidated. And from there, I went to a lot of different courses on designing electrical systems, different code classes, and just got to the point where I wanted to be involved in making the code. And so I've served on Code Making Panel 6 and Code Making Panel 7 for the last 2 cycles, and I intend to serve on code making panels for the rest of my career. It is truly serving the industry and serving the public, because this is how we make safe electrical installations. This is how we keep the public safe, and this is how we keep our society safe.
Christel, it seems to me this training on December 18th is a great opportunity, both from the attendees' perspective, the people that sign up and are going to be there, and from your perspective too, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I love talking about the code. It's a new format. It's an opportunity to reach out to a wider audience. So I'm really looking forward to it. Not only talking about the requirements and the structure of the code, but bringing in the changes as we talk about the subjects. And I'm looking forward to it, and looking forward to the questions that come from our audience.
Why do I need to be there if I'm somebody that makes my living around the National Electrical Code? Why do I need to be there on December 18th?
This is a great opportunity to really understand the structure of the code, to make your job easier when you're trying to find requirements in the code, and also to see the changes to some of our most basic requirements that have come about in 2014.
Christel Hunter, she will be the subject matter expert on December 18th for NFPA training all day long. Christel, thanks for your time.
Thanks, Butch.